Hello and welcome to BAFTA. This year the Academy celebrates a very special anniversary. It's 60 years since the then British Film Academy was founded under the chairmanship of the pioneering director David Lynch. This event is held annually in his memory and commemorates the work of film directors who, like David Lynch, have made a truly outstanding contribution to cinema. Previous names include the likes of Robert Altman, Ken Loach, Sidney Pollack and Woody Allen. This year we're talking about someone who is truly an artist, a groundbreaking, visionary film director. Amongst other films, his work includes Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, Mulholland Drive, and most recently, Inland Empire, and that's for the cinema. For television, who can forget Twin Peaks? Let's have a little look at some of his work.
All right, let's hit the road. We're giving our neighbor a joyride.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Lynch.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, so honour to have you here. If we could just go a little bit back, a long way back, all the way back to 50s America. It's the period you grew up in, obviously. Fascinating time in modern American history as well, and clearly great influence on your work.
Yes. The 50s, what a beautiful time. You know, as everybody knows, the birth of rock and roll in the 50s changed music so much. And it was such a thrill. And in the 50s, where I was, there was an optimism in the air, a feeling of a bright and shiny future. And there were cars that were very, very beautiful with lots of chrome. And it was a very beautiful time to kind of dream.
You got into art, and I think we'd all agree you can see that influence very much in your films. When did that happen for you?
Well, when I was little, I would draw all the time. And I draw, because it was right after the war, I would draw mainly guns, rifles, and knives. And
good, healthy things to be drawing.
Really enjoyed that drawing. And my mother, for some reason, refused to give me coloring books, which was a real blessing.
She might have been a bit worried about you, actually, if you were
drawing
all that stuff. Yeah.
So my father would bring paper home from the office, and I would draw on that. And I never thought that drawing, and I got into painting, I never thought it was something that an adult, did. And seriously.
No, I don't know why I'm laughing. Actually, it's obviously a perfectly good thing for an adult to do.
But it was so much fun. It was so thrilling. But I thought it would come to an end. And then I met my friend Toby Keeler. My family moved to Virginia. And on the front lawn of my girlfriend's house, I met Toby, just not knowing that soon he was going to be stealing my girlfriend from me. But it didn't matter, because that night Toby told me that his father was a painter. And at first I thought a house painter. But then I realized that he was a fine artist, and it totally, completely changed my life.
You're also fascinated by machinery and industry and belching smokestacks and things like that, yeah?
The smokestack industry, smoke and fire, big machines, great sounds come out of this, factory neighborhoods, a whole world of that, industry that came up. And it just is, it's fantastic visually and for sound. It's just beautiful.
You've embraced modern technology. I mean, you were a fairly early sort of avatar of the internet. Do you not feel, it seems to me that your work is, all the films and probably what you'll continue to do is very rooted in that time. So one of the things I love is that love of big noise and big machinery. It's something I really like. Are you a bit adrift in this world where everything is kind of smaller and we're talking about little laptops and
Yeah, but, cinema can create another world. It's what's so beautiful about it. So even though out in this world things are one way, we can get ideas and make a world to go into and have experiences. So all those things can come to life.
Well, that leads me neatly into the first film that we're going to talk about, which is Eraserhead. I think it's clear from that there are things in there that only cinema could really have delivered. Let's have a little look at the scene from that.
Okay.
Let's just absorb that, I think. How do you feel looking back on that? How often do you actually watch Eraserhead these days?
I saw Eraserhead last with my then, I guess, 14-year-old son.
Right. And what questions did it prompt from your son?
Well, I don't answer them really anyway. So, but he really liked Eraserhead. Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film.
Mm-hmm. Why, elaborate on that.
No, I won't. No one sees it that way, or maybe somebody out there does, but it is.
No, how did it feel? We're moving on somewhat here, but when the film was released and it began to just take off, and it happened
didn't
in that...
ever take off.
Well, it was a lovely gradual...
It
okay,
was
not a
very,
take-off, but,
yes,
that sort of lovely
yes,
gradual... It took wing and flew, didn't it? I mean, use an awful kind of metaphor there, but...
No, I always say it finished in a time when the midnight circuit was very popular. And had it not been for the midnight circuit, Eraserhead would have been long gone. but a guy named Ben Barinholtz, who they call the grandfather of midnight films, saw it in New York, loved it, and he distributed it. He said, David, I'm going to spend no money and no advertising, and it'll be lines around the block within 2 months. So, and it was sort of true.
So after 15 years in the margins, maybe it didn't feel that way, but you've arrived with The Elephant Man. We're going to move on to that now. So you have Oscar nominations coming out of your ears. You're actually nominated.
Yeah, afterwards.
You must have felt amazed. I mean, from a Razorhead to be in that situation very quickly. How did that feel?
Incredible. And I it's Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks took a chance. Mel Brooks, fate handed me Mel Brooks, and he saw Eraserhead. I thought this would be the end of everything. But he came out of the theater racing toward me, arms outspread, and braced me and said, "You're a madman. I love you." And
did you give him a big cuddle after that?
Yes, very tight hug. And Mel Brooks backed me up 100% on that film, and it worked out really well.
So I'm aware we moved rather speedily through from Eraserhead through to The Elephant Man there, but we're going to have a look at a scene from The Elephant Man. In this one, Anthony Hopkins' character is inviting Sir John Gielgud to look beneath the surface of the Elephant Man and find the humanity within. It's an incredible scene, this. Fabulous.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me lie down.
Well, it was a brave attempt, Treves, but the man was obviously simply mouthing words taught by you.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry to have wasted your time, Mum.
He restoreth my soul.
He simply doesn't belong here. He'd be much better off somewhere else where he could be constantly looked after.
Right.
I'm sorry, Treves, that things have turned out this way. Good day to you.
Yea. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff.
Mr. Cargon?
Yes, what is it?
What's that? I didn't teach him that part.
Goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord.
How did you know the rest of it? I didn't teach you the rest of it.
It's very strange.
Tell me, how did you know the rest of it, the 23rd Psalm?
I used to read the Bible every day. I know it very well, and the Book of Common Prayer. 23rd Psalm's beautiful. It's my favorite.
That, to me, is one of the most powerful scenes in cinema, frankly. I mean, a very basic question. What do you remember about shooting that scene?
John Hurt, who literally, became, in his morning makeup, transformed to John Merrick. Just the beyond most beautiful performance. Tony Hopkins just was rock solid, and Sir John Gielgud, what a great human being he was. I remember, I tell this story, the day I was going to work with Sir John, I was putting on my underwear and thinking, here I am putting on my underwear, and I'm going off to work with Sir John Gielgud.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you actually got The Elephant Man?
I had a script I wrote after Eraserhead called Ronnie Rocket, and it was Stewart who called me out of the blue one day raving about Eraserhead, and Stewart was then trying to help me get Ronnie Rocket going. No one wanted to know about Ronnie Rocket. So one day, after trying for a long time, I called Stewart and I said, Stewart, I think maybe I should try to direct something that exists. Do you know of any scripts that I could direct? And Stewart said, David, I know 4 scripts that you could direct. Come to lunch with me at Nibbler's, and I'll tell you about them. So we met up at Nibbler's and sat down, and before we even ordered anything, I said, Stewart, now tell me. And he said, well, the first one is a film called The Elephant Man. And an explosion went off in my head. I never heard the other 3. I said, that's the one I want to do.
Looking back, knowing what we know now about your the themes and preoccupations evident in your films, the jump to Victorian England seems even more profound. I mean, you went from Jack Nance to Sir John Gielgud,
yes.
Thinking in Your Underwear.
I was born in Missoula, Montana, and here I am in London doing a Victorian drama. Pretty strange. But strange things happened. I was at the East London Hospital. It was a derelict hospital, but the beds were still in there, wards and these fantastic hallways. And I was standing in a ward, near a ward, in a hallway, but I could see the ward. And like a thing started happening. And I was back in time. I knew exactly the world, as if I was there. And once that thing came over me, I owned Victorian England. It was a strange experience.
We'll move on now to Blue Velvet. Now, the things that we think of again in your films, I think it's fair to say they kind of reached a zenith with Blue Velvet. The scene that we're going to look at now, this is where Jeffrey Beaumont is confronted by the horror of his actions, I guess. Let's have a look.
Mama loves you.
It seems to me that Blue Velvet is even more powerful now, 21 years on, than it was in 1986 when it was released, because paradoxically, we live in more violent times now, and the power of the film, I mean, I watched it again, hadn't seen it for maybe 10 or 15 years, and I watched it again the other night, and we live in very morally policed times. Do you think that it actually says more, it's more of a comment on now than it was even then?
I don't know.
Increasing violence,
To me, it's its own world. I like going into that world. And I don't know what it says, everybody said it's like in the 50s, the optimistic, shiny exterior, and then a lot of darkness, swimming beneath it. And that's sort of what it's about. All those things go on. Doesn't matter what time it is.
So kind of timeless then, really. Yeah?
Sure.
Now, the other thing, of course, that a lot of us will remember from Blue Velvet is Dennis Hopper's incredible portrait of Frank Booth.
He was on the list of actors for sure, but the reputation of Dennis was, had fallen because you just couldn't work with him. And they said, you can't work with Dennis. So one day his manager called, and his manager says, David, Dennis is clean and sober, made another picture, and you could talk to the director, and he'll tell you how great it was working with Dennis. I said, oh, and he said, also, Dennis really wants to talk to you. So the next phone call was Dennis Hopper, and Dennis says, David, I have to play Frank Booth because I am Frank Booth. And so I say it was good news and bad news combined. And but Dennis, he's the perfect person, and it was so beautiful that he did that.
We're going to move on to 1990.
Okay.
It's the year Wild at Heart came out, the year it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, of course. It's fair to say, I think, you were going through something of an imperial phase, if you like, in that time.
What's imperial phase?
Things were going pretty well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You were an emperor. Now, you've often talked about yourself as being a kind of like a radio, a kind of receiver of signals, and then you sort of channel them, or however you want to go with that.
Catch ideas, and then translate them to a medium.
Well, let's take you back. Okay, we're going to have a look at a scene from Wild at Heart now. And in this scene, Sailor Ripley, played by Nicolas Cage, serenades Lula, played by Laura Dern. Fantastic. Let's have a look.
Treat me like a fool, treat me mean and cruel, but love me, break my faithful heart, tear it all apart, but love me, won't you love me? Wherever you ever go, darling, I'll be oh so lonely. I'll be sad and blue, crying over you, dear only.
Laura Dern in that scene is just...
Laura
she's
Dern
fabulous,
as Lula
isn't
is really incredible, yeah.
And yeah, I think we'd seen her as Sandy, haven't we, 4 years before
Yeah.
that? Now, to go from the embodying the kind of all-American innocent to someone, I think it's fair to say, is slightly less innocent in that film. What is it with Laura as well? Because you use her a lot, don't you?
Well, I worked with her in Blue Velvet, and then she became a friend. And when you know somebody more, you see different sides of them, and you see that they can do different things than somebody else might think. So when it came for Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, I knew she could do it. And but Lula's got this kind of goodness in her, and so does Sailor. And I always say it's a modern romance because Sailor really respects Lula, and Lula really respects Sailor, and they're kind of equals going down the road. It's a real nice relationship.
There's humour in that film. There's absurdity, but there's humour, but there's a great deal of optimism because love conquers all in that film. There's a hellish kind of world, and there's a happy ending. Because the book didn't have a happy ending, did it? So.
No. And no one could really live with that.
Why did to adapt someone else's work as well, having come up with such a...
I just read that book. I wasn't supposed to, direct it. My friend Monty said, "I'm thinking of directing this thing. Would you be, maybe want to be executive producer or something?" I said, "Monty, what if I read the book and wanted to direct it myself?" He said, "Well, then, David, you'll direct it." And this happened.
We're going to move on to Mulholland Drive now. In this scene that we're about to see, Adam Kesher meets the cowboy.
Howdy.
Howdy to you.
Beautiful evening.
Yeah.
Sure want to thank you for coming all the way up here to see me from that nice hotel downtown.
No problem. What's on your mind?
Well, now, here's a man who wants to get right down to it. Kind of anxious to get to it, are you?
Whatever.
Man's attitude goes some ways, the way his life will be. Is that something you might agree with?
Sure.
Now, did you answer because that's what you thought I wanted to hear? Or did you think about what I said and answer because you truly believe that to be right?
I agree with what you said. Truly.
What'd I say?
That a man's attitude determines to a large extent how his life will be.
I could ask you what the film is about, but you don't really like to tell people what your films are about. Can I ask you instead what other theories you have heard? What have other people propounded to you about Mulholland Drive?
Many things.
Let's hear a few of them then. If
No. You know, I always say that, see, it's the film is the thing. The film is the thing. You work so hard to get, you know, after the ideas come, to get this thing built, all the elements to feel correct, the whole to feel correct, in this beautiful language called cinema. And the second it's finished, people want you to change it back into words. And it's very, very saddening. It's a torture. It's the film. The language is cinema. When things are concrete, very few variations in interpretation. But the more abstract a thing gets, the more varied the interpretations. But people still know inside what it is for them. And even if they don't trust their intuition, I always say that if some girl named Sally, she comes out of the theater, I don't have a clue what that means. She goes over with Bob and Jim to get a cup of coffee. Bob starts talking about what he thinks it is, because he knows exactly what it is. He starts talking. 5 seconds later, Sally is saying, no, it's not that. And all these things comes out of Sally. So Sally really did know for herself. That's the beauty of it. It's just like life. You see the same things, but you come up with many, many different things as you go along as a detective.
Okay. Detective Jason thinks it's a ghost story. Is it a ghost story?
It's a ghost story for you.
The conventions of cinema, we want the vision.
No, you have everything in the film. That's the thing. It doesn't matter what I say. Zip. It can only be a negative. The thing is built so you don't want to take anything away and you don't want to add anything to it. It's complete. That's it. And that's it. And if the author is, I always say, like, somebody wrote this book and the poor guy died. So you can't dig him up and ask him, what this book means. You just love the book and you come to your own conclusion.
This brings us on to the final clip we're going to look at. Now, this is from Inland Empire. I think everything you've said in the last 5 minutes probably holds true more than for anything else for this film. It's an amazing opportunity to talk to you about this film. But in this scene, Laura Dern's character, Laura again, reaches a rather grim end. Or does she? Let's have a look.
Dying, lady. What'd you say about Pomona?
Without a doubt, the most intriguing film I've ever seen.
This thing started, I got an idea, and I got an idea for a scene. And I thought it was a one-off scene. So I had this Sony PD 150 camera, And I wrote the scene out, just like a regular thing, and I shot that scene. Then I got another idea, and I thought it was a one-off kind of thing, so I shot that thing. And it didn't relate to the first thing at all. Then I got another idea, and it didn't relate to the first two. I thought it was a one-off thing. I shot that. Then I got some ideas that related those. But this happens in writing a script. But here it was already shot, and shot with the Sony PD-150. So I continued with the Sony PD-150 until and then more ideas came. And when the more came, I shot in a more traditional way, but always have the script, before we went out and shot anything.
So you put the material out there, and you just invite us to kind of...
I get ideas, and I get some ideas I fall in love with. And I fall in love with them, like I say, because of the idea and the way cinema can translate that idea. So, or painting could translate. You get painting ideas, you get chair ideas, you get, photography ideas, music ideas. And then you get an idea. It's such a beautiful thing to get an idea, because then you see it, you hear it, you feel it, there it is. And then you just translate it, and you build it. A lot of times I get an idea, I don't know what that idea means. So I think about it, and I find a meaning for me. Another idea comes, hooks to it, the script starts going, building, and then the thing sort of, it's about this, it's about this. And then, the more you have, the quicker it comes together, and then you build that thing until it feels correct based on those ideas that have been driving the boat. And then you get it to feel correct, and then it's done.
David, we'll have to leave it there. We could talk all night. It's been a profound personal pleasure. It really has. You've changed cinema. Keep on changing it. Thank you from me, and thank you from BAFTA.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.